Today, Denzel Washington is more than an actor. He is a cultural icon, a mentor, and a symbol of discipline and resilience. His face is etched into some of the most powerful films ever made. His voice carries authority and hope, and his influence stretches far beyond Hollywood. For decades, audiences worldwide have looked at him not just as a performer, but as a man who embodies integrity, faith, and unstoppable willpower. But behind this commanding presence on the screen lies a story that began far from the glamour of red carpets. To understand how Denzel became the man who redefined what strength and leadership could look like in cinema and in life, we must go back to the streets of Mount Vernon, New York. He was born in 1954, into a working-class family that carried both love and turbulence. His father, a quiet and disciplined Pentecostal minister, believed in order and faith above all. His mother, who ran a beauty parlor, worked long hours and became the beating heart of the household. Their marriage, however, did not last. When Denzel was just a boy, the family split apart, leaving him caught in the middle of two worlds: the strict, rule-bound home of his father and the more open, nurturing space his mother provided. It was in these years that young Denzel began to grasp the weight of choices, the impact of discipline, and the ache of uncertainty. He carried one object with him everywhere: a worn-out Bible, a gift from his father. At the time, he didn't fully understand it. But in later years, he would often return to those pages, as if that book had been quietly guiding him even when he felt lost. Mount Vernon in the 1960s was not a gentle environment for a young boy. The streets could swallow you if you let them. Many of his childhood friends would eventually drift into crime, drugs, or prison. Denzel himself admitted that had his mother not intervened at a crucial time, his own life might have taken the same dark turn. Sensing danger, his mother made a bold decision. She sent him away to a boarding school in upstate New York. It wasn't a glamorous place, but it gave him distance from the streets and a chance to reset his path. At first, he resisted. He felt abandoned, exiled from home. Yet in that space, far from the noise of his neighborhood, the foundation of his resilience began to form. He didn't yet know it, but those early days of discipline, separation, and survival would shape the very core of the man who would later command every stage and screen he stepped on. At boarding school, Denzel Washington faced loneliness that cut deeper than he expected. He was just a teenager, far from the comfort of home, and often wondered why his mother had made that choice. Yet, she had seen something he could not, a future slipping away if he stayed in the streets of Mount Vernon. Many of the boys he once played ball with were now entangled in gangs and crime. Years later, Denzel would look back and realize that his mother's difficult decision had saved his life. School didn't come easy. His grades were average, and he often struggled to find focus. But there was one constant in his life: his mother's faith in him. She reminded him to carry himself with dignity, even when no one was watching. She reminded him that discipline was not punishment, but preparation. Her words planted seeds that would later grow into his unshakable work ethic. After finishing high school, Denzel returned to Mount Vernon, but he wasn't the same boy who had left. He carried himself differently, with a quiet awareness that he had been given a second chance. Yet he was still searching for a purpose, for a place where he could belong. At first, he thought athletics might be his path. Basketball and football gave him structure, but his talent wasn't enough to carry him to the top. He drifted, working small jobs, trying to find direction. The turning point came when he enrolled at Fordham University. At Fordham, he studied journalism, unsure if this was the road he wanted, but he was hungry for opportunity. It was during these years that something unexpected happened. On a summer break, while working at a youth camp, Denzel stepped onto a small stage in a community play. The moment he began speaking, something shifted. He felt an energy he had never experienced before. The audience laughed, clapped, and leaned into his words. For the first time, he felt that rare spark, the alignment of talent, passion, and destiny. One of his professors at Fordham recognized this spark and encouraged him to study acting more seriously. Denzel hesitated. Acting wasn't considered a secure path, and his practical side told him to stay on the safer road of journalism. But deep inside, he couldn't ignore how alive he felt when he performed. It was as if all the discipline of his childhood, all the resilience he had been forced to build, suddenly had a channel. Still, the road ahead would not be smooth. His father, a man of stern principles, didn't understand the idea of chasing an acting career. He worried his son was wasting time on a dream with no guarantee. This tension left Denzel torn between pleasing his father and following his own voice. But the pull of the stage was stronger than the fear of failure. By his early 20s, he made the decision. He would give acting everything he had. He enrolled in the Lincoln Center campus of Fordham, where he immersed himself in theater studies. Soon after, he would move on to the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, sharpening his craft, learning to embody not just characters, but human truth itself. The boy who had once struggled to stay out of trouble was now learning to transform struggle into art. And though he didn't yet know it, the world was waiting for him. Denzel Washington's decision to pursue acting was not a quiet hobby. It was a leap of faith. At the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, he discovered what it meant to live inside a character, to carry another person's truth as if it were his own. It wasn't just technique, it was transformation. He studied long hours, rehearsed endlessly, and learned to endure the criticism that came with training among talented peers. Every misstep became a lesson. Every failure was fuel. After a year of intense training, Denzel returned to New York with sharpened skills and restless ambition. He began auditioning for theater productions, often facing rejection, but each no only deepened his determination. Then, in the late 1970s, a door cracked open. He landed roles in stage plays, where his commanding voice and physical presence began to draw attention. One of his earliest significant roles was in the play When the Chickens Came Home to Roost, where he portrayed Malcolm X. It was only a stage performance, but it foreshadowed something far greater waiting years ahead. He also appeared in small television roles. In 1982, he made his first mark on the screen with a medical drama series called Saint Elsewhere. At first, it was just a job, steady work, something many young actors would have been grateful for. But Denzel didn't just do the job. He elevated it. His character, Dr. Philip Chandler, became one of the standout roles of the series, and audiences began to remember his face. Still, there were no guarantees. Hollywood was a world where talent alone was not enough, especially for a black actor in the early 1980s. Roles were limited, and stereotypes ran deep. Many doors remained closed. But Denzel carried with him not just ambition, but an unshakable belief that excellence could not be ignored. During this time, he developed habits that would define his career: relentless preparation, respect for the craft, and a refusal to settle for mediocrity. He once described how he would rehearse lines over and over, not just to memorize, but to embody them fully, until they became second nature. This discipline was not born in Hollywood. It had been forged long before, in the strict home of his father and the tough love of his mother. It wasn't long before film directors began to notice. In 1987, he delivered a breakthrough performance in Cry Freedom, portraying South African activist Steve Biko. The role demanded both fire and restraint, and Denzel carried it with a depth that left critics stunned. Suddenly, he wasn't just a promising actor, he was a force. But even as opportunities grew, challenges loomed. The spotlight brought pressure. Success was fragile. And soon, Denzel would face setbacks that could have derailed everything. For all his talent, Denzel Washington quickly learned that Hollywood was not a smooth road. After his early success in Cry Freedom, he expected more meaningful opportunities to follow. But the reality was harsher. Too often, the roles offered to him leaned on stereotypes. Shallow parts written without depth, roles that didn't reflect the humanity he wanted to portray. For a man who believed in dignity above all, this was not acceptable. He faced moments of doubt. There were nights when he questioned if he had chosen the right path, if acting could really become more than survival work. He was not immune to rejection. Every audition that ended in silence left a scar. But the difference was how he responded. Where many would have compromised, Denzel chose patience. He would rather wait for the right role than accept one that betrayed his values. This stubborn integrity nearly cost him opportunities. But it also set him apart. He wasn't just chasing fame, he was building a legacy. The turning point came in 1989 with Glory, a historical drama about the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment, one of the first black units to fight in the American Civil War. Denzel played Private Silas Tripp, a role filled with pain, anger, and courage. On set, his performance shook even the most seasoned actors. There is a famous scene where his character is whipped, and a single tear rolls down his cheek. That moment wasn't scripted. It was real. born out of Denzel's ability to channel truth so deeply that audiences felt it in their bones. Glory earned him the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. But more than the award itself, it proved something to the world, and to himself. He could not be ignored. His art carried weight, and his voice had found its stage. Still, even after this triumph, the challenges continued. Fame can be a dangerous friend. Offers poured in, but not all of them aligned with his vision. Denzel had to navigate the fine line between opportunity and compromise. He turned down roles that could have made him wealthier, choosing instead to pursue characters that demanded honesty and strength. One of the most significant tests came years later when he was offered the chance to portray Malcolm X in Spike Lee's 1992 film. It was a role filled with controversy and responsibility. Many doubted whether any actor could capture the complexity of Malcolm X's life. Some critics even questioned if audiences were ready for such a film. Denzel accepted, but not lightly. He immersed himself in Malcolm's speeches, mannerisms, and writings. He visited the places Malcolm lived, studied his journey, and carried the weight of representing a man whose story still stirred fierce emotions. The result was a performance so powerful, so authentic, that even those who had known Malcolm X personally praised it as uncanny. Although he did not win the Oscar for that role, the film cemented his place as one of the greatest actors of his generation. It was no longer about promising talent. Denzel Washington had become a voice of history, resilience, and truth. The setbacks had not broken him. They had refined him. They had prepared him for the moment when discipline, faith, and relentless work would carry him to the highest level. By the 1990s, Denzel Washington had already proven himself, but his true breakthrough was not just in awards or roles. It was in the way he built his career with unshakable discipline. While other actors chased trends, Denzel followed a principle that became his North Star: consistency with excellence. His defining habit was preparation. He never walked onto a set without knowing every detail of his character. He didn't just memorize lines. He dissected them, embodied them, and lived them. Colleagues often remarked that when Denzel arrived on set, the energy shifted. He carried himself with the same seriousness whether he was filming a blockbuster or rehearsing a stage play. For him, greatness wasn't about the spotlight. It was about honoring the craft. This discipline showed in roles that stretched across genres. In The Hurricane, 1999, he transformed himself into Reuben Carter, a boxer wrongfully imprisoned for murder. His performance wasn't just acting, it was immersion, capturing decades of pain, hope, and resilience. In Training Day, 2001, he shocked audiences with his portrayal of a corrupt detective, a role so raw and unsettling that it won him the Academy Award for Best Actor. These performances revealed his range. From moral strength to moral corruption, he could embody the full spectrum of humanity. But what made Denzel different was not only what he did on screen. It was what he carried in life. He often spoke of faith, of putting God first, and of trusting that his steps were guided by more than ambition. Before every major decision, he returned to the same object he had carried since childhood: his Bible. That book was not a prop. It was his anchor, a reminder that discipline without faith was empty. Another habit that shaped his path was humility. Even as he reached the highest levels of fame, he refused to see himself as above others. He kept close to his family, to his community, and to the idea that his success was not only his own. He often mentored younger actors, reminding them that the spotlight fades, but character endures. The key lesson Denzel lived by was simple yet profound: do the work, and let success take care of itself. He wasn't interested in shortcuts. He believed in daily discipline, in showing up prepared, in grinding quietly until the results spoke louder than words. This defining habit, preparation, guided by faith and humility, became the backbone of his career. It was the reason he could step into any role and command absolute respect. It was the reason audiences trusted him. By the time he entered the 2000s, Denzel Washington was no longer just a celebrated actor. He was a symbol, a man whose story carried a message. Greatness is built, not given. Today, Denzel Washington stands as one of the most respected and admired figures in the world of film, and far beyond it. His name is synonymous with integrity, discipline, and mastery of craft. Younger generations of actors look to him not just as a star, but as a mentor, a standard of what it means to carry both talent and character with equal weight. But for all the awards, the iconic roles, and the worldwide recognition, Denzel's true success story is written not only on movie screens but in his personal life. Married since 1983 to Pauletta Pearson Washington, he built a family that has remained his foundation. Together, they raised 4 children, not in the glare of Hollywood excess, but in a home grounded in values, faith, and responsibility. To this day, he credits his wife as the steady force behind his balance, often saying that without her, none of this would have been possible. Even now, with decades of achievements behind him, Denzel continues to surprise. He directs films, returns to Broadway stages, and takes roles that challenge him instead of comfort him. For him, there is no arriving. There is only the next step, the next story, the next opportunity to honor his craft. And yet, despite the scale of his career, Denzel remains consistent with the principles that shaped him as a boy in Mount Vernon. He still speaks about faith as his compass. He still emphasizes discipline, humility, and service. He reminds young people to stay prepared, to stay committed, to focus not on fame but on purpose. One lesser-known fact about him is that he quietly donates to educational programs and scholarships, often without publicity. He understands that real legacy isn't about statues or ceremonies. It's about lifting others, giving them the same chance his mother once fought to give him. So what can we take from his story? Denzel Washington's journey tells us that success is not about luck or shortcuts. It's about building habits that outlast temptation. It's about discipline, faith, and a refusal to settle for less than your best. He was once a boy at risk of losing himself to the streets. Today, he is a global symbol of excellence. The difference was choice, the choice to prepare, to believe, to rise again after every failure. And that is the lesson for anyone watching right now. If he could climb from uncertainty to influence, so can you. Your greatness is built in daily decisions. In how you prepare, how you carry yourself, and how you refuse to quit. Denzel Washington's life is proof that discipline can shape destiny, that faith can carry you through storms, and that one person's unwavering commitment to purpose can inspire millions. His story is not just his own. It's a call to action. The stage is yours now. What will you do with it?